SQL is the backbone of modern applications. I always say if there is one thing you should learn to get answers from data, it's SQL. But now with large language models like GPT, that power apps like ChatGPT, are we going to see an end to the use of SQL? This is a world-famous relational database called Chinook. It contains information about a fictional digital music shop. The Chinook database contains information about the artists, songs, and albums from the music shop, as well as information on the shop's employees, customers, and the customers' purchases. With 11 tables and relationships between them, it can be regarded as a database of significant complexity. Here I have a question that one might ask of this database, namely, which country's customers spent the most? Here is the answer to this question, and unsurprisingly, customers from the United States spent the most. Here is the SQL that we would have to write to get this answer. Now, what if I told you I don't have to write the SQL myself anymore? I can just get a language model to create and run that SQL for me. Here's how. Get an AI to understand that schema. From that human understandable query, find the most likely tables that will have this information. Then use a language model that has been trained on SQL to generate a query. Then run that query. Simple, isn't it? No? Okay. Then let's write some code to build this. We'll use LangChain.js. Actually, Shoaib's gonna take over from here, folks. We will start by importing the OpenAI language model wrapper, SQL database utility and agent from LangChain, as well as an ORM to connect to our database. After this, we need a function to wrap all our logic. It's going to be an async function because we are calling external APIs. Then connect to our database. Add that database as a source to LangChain. This will allow LangChain to start interrogating the internals of the database and try to match them with the user's question. We use the database source to create our toolkit. The idea of a toolkit is to encapsulate a box of tools that an agent uses to do some action based on instructions that come from the user in the form of natural language. That's the magic. Next, let's create the language model and create the agent. We call the agent variable executor, since that will trigger the final call to the go from user input to figuring out the SQL to run on the database. We create our input query, which will come from the user interface in a real app. We call the executor with the input and print the results. Lastly, we also print the steps the agent took to get to its answer, allowing us to see the decisions it made to get its answer. Let's now run the query and see how it performs. We can see the answer to our question on the first line. Let's now walk through the rest of the output here. What we are seeing is the internals of the actions our LangChain agent took to give us this answer. We can see the first action used a tool called List Tables SQL, and we also see an observation from performing the action. And as expected, we observe a list of tables that are in this database. The next action uses a tool called Info SQL. This looks at the schema of the relevant tables found by the previous action. The output shows the full table schemas for two tables, namely customer and invoice. Next action is called Query SQL, and as the name suggests, it queries the database using SQL. So to our question, is SQL dead? I'm sorry to disappoint some, but SQL will never die.